I took so many leadership classes. One class that really no one taught was how to think. Oh, they taught me about theory. They taught me about change theory. They taught me about how to handle crisis. Taught me about how to be, how to strategize in terms of hiring and things of that nature. But how to think as a leader, the heart, the desire to continue in having students enjoy that environment became something that I wanted to do. I pursued my teaching degree at that point in time. Um, and I realized the only way that I was going to be able to ensure that every student enjoyed their experience in my class was if I had the authority to hire every teacher. I can control who's coming into the building. I can control what the expectations are in the building. I can control, to the most part, how we develop and train and support the educators in the building that have a high degree of impact on what student experience will be like in the building.
What if you turn hardship into greatness, anger into serenity? Everything changes. Make your life a masterpiece. Welcome, I'm Yannick, your host, and now joining me, Dr. Sam Nix. Dr. Sam Nix is the author of 6 Steps to a Strong School Culture, published by Solution Tree in 2024. And now Dr. Nix joins me for talking about his beautifully written book. And by the way, he is also the Chief Academic Officer of Duncanville Independent School District in Texas, and he is a award-winning educator. So an outstanding person. I'm really pleased to have you here on the show, Dr. Nix. Welcome.
Yannick, thank you so much for having me. It is an absolute pleasure to be on your podcast with your um, such intellectual audience. And I am so thankful for the opportunity not only to be in education to serve students, but to be here with you and to be able to discuss a little bit about why knowledge matters in education and about a book success to a strong school culture. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, and it's wonderful. I really thank you because I love your optimism, your mindset that you're really instilling in students and really the whole, education family. I think it's so important, especially today. I mean, it's really fast pacing and everything. But first and foremost, before we really dive into the book, let's introduce yourself. If you had to introduce yourself in only one powerful sentence, what would it be?
Man, Yannick, you put me on the spot. One powerful sentence. If I had to introduce myself in one sentence, it would probably be I love to learn, I love to serve, and I love to support.
Beautiful. And it's true, I really put you on the spot, and this was not my intention at all. But, sometimes you think like, it's better you don't really send it beforehand because, you're a very busy professional. You're also a dad and a husband, which I tell everyone, parents are truly, my heroes because there's nothing more important than taking this huge responsibility on as a parent. So thank you for that. So I just want to make sure that you didn't have overload, with all your commitments that you have, besides that. So to really like start really broadly, I just want to know from you how you define education from K to 12, and then also what education to you means when it comes to personal development. So first, really in terms of schooling, and then I just want to have like a sense of how you see education from a personal development perspective, if you don't mind.
To take your first question of how I see education, I see education as the ultimate equalizer. The goal of education is to provide opportunities for students to grow, to learn, to develop, to experience, um, to prepare them for what they have yet to see in life. Um, how I see education personally is that we have some work to do to ensure that that happens for every student. We have some work to do to ensure that we're properly preparing them to think critically moving forward. We have some work to do to ensure that our focus is on the right thing as we quote unquote educate students moving forward. As I see the educational system, I see a system that is passionate. I see a system that is dedicated. I see a system that is losing um, value in terms of perception, but I see a system that has lots of promise, and that's my goal. My goal is to um, help and support and provide where I can guidance and resources to try to help those in the system be as successful as possible as they're endeavoring to ensure student success, um, ensure their own success. And it is quite a challenge moving forward because of where we have found ourselves in the scope of education. Our focus is on almost everything except ensuring student learning. It's on vouchers. It's on what curriculum we're using. It's on um, the the politics of how long we're in school. It's in all of these things under the guise of quote unquote education. But my charge, is to ensure that students are safe, that they're learning, that we are developing critical thinkers, and that our focus is on the actual learning when we're in school. And that is my charge, and that's why I wrote the book to support and help those individuals who are passionate and serious and genuine about ensuring student learning, how to make sure that that happens, and giving guidance and strategies and resources to get that done.
Yeah, that's wonderful, and I really appreciate the emphasis on learning. Right, it's not about teaching. Of course, that's also important because it really fuels learning. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure that students learn, right, whatever pace they are at. But the most important, really variable is really the process of really learning and engaging, and really, as you mentioned, about becoming a critical thinker. And I'm curious about what you think does critical thinking mean. And I just kind of want to bounce some ideas because to me, especially in this day and age, critical thinking to me has always become this, and I just give you the definition what I think it is. Critical thinking is really, you know, acquiring the capacity of holding two contradictory, variables basically, or worldviews in your hands and contemplate them and look for both of them, for the good and the bad, and then ultimately come to a conclusion if this might have more benefits or more drawbacks. And I'm just um, curious how you define it, because it's really hard in this day and age, right, to develop critical thinking skills, which is so required nowadays because it goes so fast, right? So fast. And we are almost unable to digest the news from today, let alone the news, in a week or 2 weeks.
You know, I love how you define critical thinking as acquiring the capacity, acquiring the capacity to hold contradictory thoughts and ideas, analyze both of those ideas, and think through pros, cons, to develop one's own opinion about good, bad, agree, disagree, so forth and so on. Yet you also hit it on the head when you said it's very difficult today. Look at how we as a society and as education are treating opposing views. Look at how we are treating AI. Our students are learning, they're watching, they're seeing when you disagree with something to respond emotionally, not intellectually. AI is doing all of our thinking for us if we're not careful. AI is spitting out facts, giving information, and if we don't teach our children how to, as you said, acquire the knowledge, analyze the knowledge, look at the pros and cons of the knowledge, manage your emotions through the knowledge to come up with a intellectual um, analysis of what you have without disregarding the other viewpoint or perspective, without castigating the other viewpoint or perspective, while still respecting their perspective, their opinion, or if we take it to education, respecting the historical framework for which it came through, then we're doing an injustice. So, to answer your question, I would agree with your analysis of what is critical thinking. It's the ability to, as you said, acquire multiple perspectives, information, and not just to acquire, but the ability to think through at multiple levels from multiple perspectives to come to a conclusion that may not be based in emotion or may not be uh, based in uh, a particular political ideology or anything of that nature. It's looking at information and taking the information for what it is, not what you want it or desire it to be.
Brilliant. I'm so glad. And it really comes true because I also loved really from where you're coming from, right? Your path. And you were always very, very committed in really pursuing your goals. And you were incredibly diligent and you really persevered because you had a goal. It was you applied several times for principal and vice principal positions, and you didn't get it immediately, but ultimately you got it. And ultimately, this was really basically history. From there on, it really showed like the trajectory and really the outstanding person that you have become, a true leader. As I mentioned, you're an award winning educator, really a thought leader in our field. And I appreciate what you're saying because today, especially, I think that's my view of having a classroom of and having a safe space, in the sense that we always should make sure that we provide a safe space, in that we allow all kinds of opinions really flow and inquire them, in a respectful manner. Because today it is so problematic when it comes to really in what we are in. We live in a society that is very democratic, and it's important that we discuss this with one another and really learn from each other why some people might see things that way and other people might see it the opposite side, or might vote for this party or that party. And I think if we really start doing that, then we just ultimately see that we have much more common interests, let alone the common denominators that really holds us together. And that's what I feel like it's a little bit missing right now, especially when it comes just to entertainment. For example, especially the US is so great in terms of entertainment, right? So I have to be always very careful that I don't go down the rabbit hole because it's so entertaining, right? So that's a huge challenge, but I think it's absolutely possible. Now, just give us an overview of where you come from and what really was the driving force of you becoming a principal and ultimately a really educational leader, and right now you are the chief academic officer. So what do you think was like pivotal in your career, for example, in your childhood or your in your adolescence, that really made you become who you become today?
Well, thank you for asking. Like too many children, I did not enjoy school. I did not like school. I did not want to continue with school. As a matter of fact, when I graduated high school, I did not go straight to college. I went to work for the railroad, for the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad. Um, I did not enjoy my education. I did not relate to too many, if any, educators in education. Um, Very few, if any, educators believed in or poured into or invested in me as an individual. Um, and how I got into education was, after working for the railroad, had an opportunity to sub as a part-time thing, right? And just really fell in love with the process and the opportunity. Yanni, I had two very, I'm going to say, educated parents. I grew up in a middle class home. My father's a pastor, my mother was an educator. And I struggled not struggled in school, but I struggled with school. And I noticed how when I came home, my parents set expectations for me. My parents set boundaries for me. My parents had standards for me. But I saw too many of my friends that weren't coming home to a mother and a father. And I saw many of my friends that didn't have that standard and weren't enjoying their educational environment. And as a result, so many of them never graduated, never finished. And years later, the system um, or their decisions have had an impact on their opportunities in life. At an early age, I knew when subbing and connecting with these students, I knew that if nothing else, I could connect with them. I could have them enjoying their time while learning in this environment. And that is exactly what happened, to the point where there started to be so much of a culture shift or change in my mindset and in theirs that, as a long term sub, other teachers were having issues, problems, challenges that I wasn't having. And I was just being me, right? And children would come and say, why can't every class be like this? And I didn't know what they were talking about. And that's not an arrogant statement. That's not egocentric statement. It's just a statement of truth, in that students will appreciate that which they enjoy. And so um, the heart, the desire to continue in having students enjoy that environment became something that I wanted to do. I pursued my teaching degree at that point in time. Um, and I realized the only way that I was going to be able to ensure that every student enjoyed their experience in my class was if I had the authority to hire every teacher. I can control who's coming into the building. I can control what the expectations are in the building. I can control, to the most part, how we develop and train and support the educators in the building that have a high degree of impact on what student experience will be like in the building. And so that's what happened. So, as an assistant principal to a principal, and I was a principal of a middle school and a principal of a high school in Munich. I used to tell teachers this all of the time uh, when I hired them. I said, I want you to understand I'm not hiring you to teach. And everyone would look at me crazy, like you're looking at me right now. I'd say, I'm not hiring you to teach. I'm hiring you to ensure students learn. And there is a big difference between a focus on your teaching and a focus on student learning. And so, if and when your focus is primarily on your teaching versus a focus primarily on their learning, then you're going to be frustrated, because my support, my engagement, my investment in your teaching is for the outcome of student learning. That's our focus. And so, as that being our focus, we were able to take um, a school, two schools actually. When I was a middle school principal, our school was the second lowest performing in the district. That district was the eighth largest district in Texas. and we were able to take that school to one of the top performing schools in the district in less than 3 years. And then when I was a high school principal, we were able to take that school and we were named as one of the top 30 schools in America for closing the achievement gaps in less than 4 years. And so it was a blessing really, but it all has to do with, like you said, a journey, a passion, and intentionality and a strategy for focusing on learning and then how to help motivate, invest in, and provide resources for teachers to be able to do that. And that's really what the book is designed to do.
So really walk us through really the very beginning. So these 6 steps to a strong school culture. When did it occur to you that these are pivotal and that you have to actually write a book about it because you will ultimately use it for yourself and also for the principles that are coming after you?
One of the things that I love about your podcast is the name, Why Knowledge Matters. But you know one thing, Yannick, you can have all of the knowledge in the world and still not be successful because knowledge is not the end product. It's the application of that knowledge that matters. You can know how to be a millionaire and do nothing about it. You can know how to be a success and do nothing about it. You can know a lot of things. It's the application of that knowledge, sustainability, consistently over time that helps you to be successful. What I have found is in all of the leadership classes that I've taken, whether that is in undergrad, whether that is in professional development, whether it's in my doctorate, I took so many leadership classes. One class that really no one taught was how to think. Oh, they taught me about theory. They taught me about change theory. They taught me about how to handle crisis. Taught me about how to be, how to strategize in terms of hiring and things of that nature. But how to think as a leader, how to develop a strategy analytically, how to take all the knowledge that I have and really in every single component of my decision making, use that knowledge in such a way to minimize gaps and mistakes in my decision making, how to analyze appropriately. Unfortunately, that wasn't part of my preparation. But some things you do innately, you got to step back because not everybody does that innately. For an example, you're an excellent communicator. So if someone came to you and said, well, how can I be an excellent communicator? You're going to have to step back because you do it innately. It's not like you just, someone had trained you how to be a great communicator. Yet that's just who you are. But if you were to peel back the layers of what makes you a great communicator, you would be able to help that individual see, train, understand on the things that they could do to improve their communication. 6 steps to a strong school culture does that. The leadership cycle is such that it's a strategic way of thinking that helps leaders minimize their mistakes and maximize their potential for success. And where this really derives from is from um, the decision making theory. And really, it's tandem to what's called the aeronautical decision making. Any pilot, if you ask them about ADM, right, just ADM, aeronautical decision making, they're familiar with it. They'll talk to you about it. They know it. And here's what's tremendous about it, guys. Think about a pilot. Yeah, you are never as vulnerable as you are when you're somewhere that you're not supposed to be, right? We're not designed to be in the air, right? So when planes are in the air, that's a very dangerous place to be. Pilots can't control wind. Pilots can't control lightning. Pilots can't control turbulence, engine failure, birds flying into it. Pilots can't control that. But what they found was by teaching pilots a way of thinking, strategizing, being critical, they were able to reduce accidents by human error by 48%. This is research that is identified in the book in the United States. And by teaching pilots a sequence of thinking prior to, during, and after flight, they were able to reduce, get this, Giannis, accidents related to weather by 78%. Wait a minute. Yeah, but I thought you couldn't control lightning. I thought you can't control turbulence. I thought you can't control weather. You can't control tornadoes. You can't control hurricane. You can't control all these things. So how is it that pilots are able to reduce the number of accidents related to uncontrollable events just by learning how to think, plan, and strategize appropriately? That research is public. And so that's why every single pilot has to go through a training for how to think, how to plan, how to strategize. Yet in leadership, especially in educational leadership, where I say there is nothing more important than education. Nothing. You don't have doctors without teachers. You don't have lawyers without teachers. You don't have pilots without teachers. You don't have presidents or judges without. There's no profession, in my opinion, more valued or important than education. Yet the leaders in education, oftentimes, metaphorically speaking, get to their jobs and they're trying to fly a plane without understanding how to think, plan strategically in a way. That's what the 6 steps to the leadership cycle do. They walk leaders, walk educators through a thought process that helps to minimize challenges and maximize success.
More personal question before we go back to the book. How do you apply what you have learned in, for example, in your private life? Because to me it looks extremely effective, not just in education, but even if you, let's say, you're running a household, you're a dad and a mother, how do you apply what you actually have written, and how has it improved your life overall?
Well, your question is appropriate. And I think when we start thinking through how do we apply the ability to slow down, be clear. So first of all, let's go through the 6 steps of the leadership cycle to better understand what the application is in personal life and or in business. So the first step to the leadership cycle is to clarify the mission. And so often when communicating, the biggest mistake that we have is actually thinking that it happened. Right? So just because I'm talking doesn't mean that I have effective communication. So we take the leaders through what does it mean to effectively communicate? It what does it mean to make sure that you have a good understanding of what you're trying to convey and that they have a good understanding of what you were trying to convey. And so often as leaders, we'll talk to people, we'll share things with people, we'll email people, we'll send notes to people, and we will think we've communicated effectively. And that's not the case. And so unpacking that and really taking leaders through understanding what effective communication looks like, sounds like, feels like, strategies for that is key because the most difficult thing to do is something that you're not clear about. So how does that apply in marriage? How does it apply as a father? How does it apply as a, you know, most, didn't I tell you to do this? And well, didn't I tell you, right? The challenge with that is that that may not be effective communication. So applying this in every area of our life in terms of whether we're communicating with children or spouses or whatever that looks like, making sure that we have strategies for not only communicating effectively, but ensuring that our intended message um, is actually received as intended is key, used every day. Second step in the leadership cycle is strategic planning and decision making. And so oftentimes, and you've heard this said, and this is research done, 1 hour of planning saves, I think the research, don't quote me on this, I think the research says, what, 5 to 6 hours or even 6 to 7 hours of working? When we can get up in the morning and plan the day effectively, when we can have conversations about what the month is going to look like, what the week is going to look like, what's expected, anticipating things, when we understand who to bring into certain situations, when we actually include people that our decisions impact and affect, when we garner their feedback and their perspectives and their opinions, that matters. And it's applicable in every area of life. The third step to the leadership cycle is empowering yourself and empowering others. And so to empower yourself means that you're being very proactive about that which affects you. You're being proactive. You're not being reactive. You're not sitting back and letting life or the organization or problems or challenges um, beat you up. You're learning, you're growing, you're developing in those areas, and then you're helping others to do the same. The, the fourth step in the leadership cycle is measurement and feedback. And anything that you don't measure, anything that you don't provide feedback on, won't grow. Nothing improves without feedback. Nothing improves without feedback. So many times, as leaders, we don't make the time, take the time to measure what's important, and monitoring and measuring two different things, and to provide quality feedback for the growth of that thing on a timely manner. The fifth step in the leadership cycle is making adjustments based on those measurements and feedback, making the right improvements at the right time, and understanding what that looks like and how to do that and when to do that is a strategy that the book lays out, backed by research. And then lastly, the sixth and final step of the leadership cycle is rewards and accountability. Understanding that people will do more of the things that they are for. And when we are holding people accountable, it's not hurting them, it's helping them to understand the standard. And through support and encouragement, they can be successful. But there has to be an element of accountability tied with celebrating and rewarding their achievement and success. So those six steps are applicable in life, business, personal, professional, children, because the more that we're able to focus on the quality of what we do and less on the quantity of what we do, the better quality of outcome that we're going to have moving forward.
It so much makes sense, and it is was really a joy to reading it because it gives you this really tangible tools that you can actually apply and you feel like really empowered. And there's so many ways, as you said, also empower yourself but also others, right? So dive a little bit more into what you mean by empower yourself and others, because it's really, I think it's so important, because most people, it doesn't really matter which age you are, we all somehow need some empowerment. We all have sometimes a lack of confidence because just life happens, right?
Yeah, anyone that's listening to this podcast, your audience, the people that tune into you, these are individuals who have a certain degree of empowerment because the people that are actively listening to you want to get better, they want to grow, they want to improve, they want to be better and do better for themselves and for others. When you empower yourself, you're taking a proactive approach to learning. You're taking a proactive approach to not be reactive to situations that happen. I'll give you a couple of examples. um, in a school system, things are always changing, whether it be policies that are coming down that are changing, whether that be the new integration of programs or curriculum or whatever the case may be. And what ends up happening sometimes is that people will know that these things are coming, but take no action. And what I like to say sometimes is, we'll know it when you tell me, I'll do it when you make me, I'll have it when you give it to me, right? Um, And so that type of passive reactive mindset doesn't set you up for success. I read 3 to 4 books a month. That doesn't make me better anything than anyone else. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to empower myself with as much knowledge so that I'm not in a situation, and especially in the area of which I'm trying to grow. So I don't know a lot about Bitcoin. I don't know a lot about AI. I don't know a lot about. So what do? I go out and I empower myself in that area so that I'm not regulated to what people are telling me. I'm not regulated to make the shift when I have to. I'm not regulated to being a victim of change. I need to ensure that I am empowering myself with the knowledge, the experiences, conversations, whatever it may be, so that I at least can have a basic knowledge of and experience with the thing that is going to or is impacting me, and not criticize it, complain about it, and taking no steps to learn or better myself in that situation. That's what I mean when I say empower. And empower others, what I mean as a leader is giving other people experiences in areas that are going to or are impacting them. So it's not just about telling somebody something. It's about allowing them to experience it, reflect on it, get feedback on it, get perspective on it, think about it, analyze it. See, all of these things, this is why companies pilot stuff, right? Why, what are they doing when they pilot this program? They're empowering, they're trying to learn about it. They're trying to see where the pros are, where the cons are, where the issues are. They're not just doing it, right? They're piloting it so that they can get as much information as possible before they go full throttle. That's what empowerment is. And so when I'm helping people to empower themselves or I'm empowering myself, it's about setting myself up as best as possible to engage with whatever it is that's coming or is in a way that I'm not the victim of change, but I'm a part of the change and I'm in some cases ahead of it.
How do you deal with things such as policies or other rules and regulations that you might not agree at all, but you have to enforce it? You have to be the leader and really, really walk the talk. How do you do this?
Well, it's the same way that a husband stays married, although he may not agree with everything, or the same, the same. Look, yeah, it goes back to what you said at the beginning. Life is not about I agree with everything. Life is not about I can only lead when I agree. I can only lead when I'm in alignment. I can only lead when everything makes sense to me. That's not what life is about. And that's not what leadership is about. Leadership is about leading through challenges. Leadership is about leading through things that you may not agree with. Leadership is about understanding how to work with and through people to accomplish the task. And yes, things are going to come down, policies, procedures, challenges, initiatives that I don't agree with. But the goal is not that I agree with everything. The goal is that I learn how to manage my emotions in the change and work with the organization to accomplish the outcome. I can say what I need to say, I can share my perspective, but leadership is about influence. And it's about not influencing people to what I think, but influencing people to accomplish the task in a way that's integral, in a way that has you maintain your character, in a way that you're don't have any agenda other than being true and genuine and honest and trustworthy with people. But to your question, that's the problem. Too many leaders can only lead when they agree. Too many teachers can only I can't I don't agree, I don't like, I don't see, I don't this, that, and third. And as a result, going back to our original statement, because we're not thinking critically, we're thinking emotionally. I can't lead them. I can't teach them. I can't do those because I don't agree. Instead of understanding, you may not have all of the information. You may not understand the perspective of the board. You may not understand that there are limiting resources. You may not understand the financial situation the district may be in. You may not understand the tea leaves. There are so many things that you may not understand, but you disagree with because of your myopic perspective. So getting an understanding is key before giving a criticism.
That's really brilliant, because what you're really telling me and everyone really is that oftentimes we are really judging from a place of ignorance, right? It's the same whatever you're president or whatever, you have so many information that you don't have as just a citizen, let's say, right? And so therefore you can never really understand fully, and therefore you also have to kind of step back and say, remain humble and just be careful and say, you know what, there might be so many factors at play, and some information might just not be disclosed at all. So therefore, yeah, that's a very important point, and that's really really tough. And I see this all the time, that people just, yeah, or I just don't like this person, or those kind of things, right? And so it's not really about the topic or the solutions. It's more about, as you said, right, it's about the emotions, how I feel. And so therefore we have to take a step back and really also really inquire ourselves. So now tell me one hack that you have, that you do when you face such a situation, because you face this daily basically, that there are some certain conflicts of interest within internal, external, whatever it is. How do you handle this in a very meaningful and also healthy way? Because at the end of the day you also have to make sure that yourself, you remain sane.
It's a great question. In the book, Six Steps to a Strong School Culture, I talk about this in depth. I talk about the difference between a technical mindset and an adaptive mindset. And I talk about the importance of emotional intelligence in leadership. And that term right there, anyone that's listening, if you hear nothing else that I say, if you don't take one note, remember, emotional intelligence as a leader is key to your success, because you got the position you're in because you're intelligent, or your intelligence, being smart, knowing things is great. But your ability to manage your emotions and the emotions of others when something happens that triggers you, that's a skill that often gets leaders terminated. Leaders don't get terminated because they don't know what they're doing. They got the job because they know what they're doing. They got the job because there was an emotional trigger, there was an emotional decision, there was an emotional something, and they devalue people in that space. They had a reaction that didn't appropriately represent the company in that space. So the question that you asked me was, how do I manage myself with the daily challenges that I may face that either I don't agree with or have challenges with, or so many other things that come mine and so many other leaders' way that we have to deal with. And the reality is, number one, the world doesn't revolve around me. I'm hired to accomplish a task. And my job is not to know it all. My job is to be an expert with what I know, but my job is to get an understanding. So, what is it that they're asking me to do? Why don't I agree with this? Let me identify the challenges and issues that I have with this. What could be their perspective? What could be their viewpoint? What are some of the things that may be pushing them to make this decision? When I pause to try to get an understanding first, de-escalates my emotions, because now it centers me in trying to work towards getting an understanding versus having a criticism. So one of the strategies that I use is just to first pause and understand what is it that I don't agree with, why don't I agree with it, and try to understand the other, whether it's a person or whether it's an organization or whether it's a whatever, what is their view, even if I disagree with their viewpoint, do I understand? Once I can do that, I now can understand why I have a challenge with this, why I have an issue with this, but I also understand what they are thinking and processing through. I'll give you an example. This is an extreme example. You have two mothers. One mother believes that the best way to raise a child, to love them, to nurture them, is to spank them. One mother believes if you spank your child, it's child abuse and you should never spank them. You should talk to them, you should rationalize with them, you should have them think. Which parent doesn't love their child? They both love their child. And they both think that what they're doing is helping their child. They both are committed to whatever it is that they think is best for the child. Yet, if one tries to convince the other and one tries to convince the other, there's going to be turmoil, fighting, all kind of stuff. Well, you don't love your child. Well, you don't love your child. So forth and so. But if they could understand where each other's coming from, not that they agree. I understand that you feel this, that, and the third. I understand that you feel this, that, and the third. That helps me to get a baseline from now why I feel how I feel. That, although maybe a bad analogy, is an analogy of things that are coming to me every day. I have to pause to get an understanding. Once I have an understanding, the second thing for me, because now I either have to initiate or I have to get feedback or I have to implement or whatever that looks like, it's understanding, does this does this align with the mission or the vision of the organization that I'm a part of? Does this align with my moral compass? If anything that I'm asked to do is not in alignment with my moral compass, I'm not doing it. Period. Nobody can make me do it. Um, I'm not doing it. But very few things that we're asked to do, if any, are in conflict with our moral compass or ask us to compromise our integrity. Most things simply we don't agree with because of an ideology, a philosophy, an experience. Okay. And like I said, the reason I became a principal is because instead of being critical of the principal, let me get in position to make those decisions to have the impact. I tell people all the time, be very careful of what you're critical about until you get in the seat. Because one thing I learned, Danny, is this: everybody is critical until they're in the seat. And then they want everybody to agree with them. And guess what everybody's going to do when you're in the seat? They're going to be critical of you. So strategy is to understand the world does not revolve around you or me. We're here to add value. We're here to help. We're here to make a difference where we are and where we can have an impact. But that doesn't mean that everything has to agree with you and you have to agree with everything. But we have a job to do. So good leaders find ways to work with and through people to get those things done in a way that builds people up, establishes systems, creates sustainability. And as challenges and issues come, a good leader knows how to navigate, win some battles, lose some battles, but ultimately we're moving towards the outcome. And in my case, the outcome is student achievement. So my whole mindset is whatever obstacle you put in my way, we're going to think about how to overcome it, how to wade through it, how to collaborate, how to find the things that we have common ground in. And even if I don't agree, We are going to find a way to ensure students are successful. That's the mindset.
Yeah, I can feel. I can feel that's what you're embodying. I also appreciate the way in which you talk about culture and artifacts and values and assumptions. So break down what you mean by culture. And just to add is that you were mentioning it that for you hiring is really important. It's really precision hiring. It's the most important thing. You want to make sure you get it right. And if not, it also could potentially mean that you have to fire people, of course. But on the other hand, what I see also in you is that if, because ultimately everything trickles down and the top can really make a cultural shift, whether these people might agree with you or not, but it tangibly really affects the culture and it changes organizations. I have this observed time and again. It makes such an impact. So tell us about culture, really how you beautifully describe it in your book, and then how a leader actually impacts this culture for the good.
A culture is the way an organization thinks. It is the way that an organization expects. The culture of an organization is not the climate. The climate can change from day to day. The climate can change from situation to situation. The climate can change from um, the principal bringing donuts one day to not bringing it. The climate changes. The culture is the way that the organization moves internally. It's the way they react. It's the way that it's the way that they feel. When you can feel a culture when you come in, um, it astounds me. Astounds me when I go to schools all across the nation. I mean, really all across. And I'm in schools and I watch adults walk in hallways and never speak to children. Yet you're probably saying that never happens in schools. That always happens in schools. And I'm not saying it happens in every school, but that's a part of the culture, right? Or when you ask a student, what did you learn today? And they don't tell you what they learned. They tell you what they did. That's a part of the culture. When change initiatives are on the horizon and everybody's complaining and everybody, that's a part of the culture. So leaders, effective leaders, understand the importance of developing a strong culture. And it's not an easy thing to do, which is why the book helps leaders step by step. Number one, understand the culture that they're in, analyze the culture that they're in, and know specifically what action steps to take to impact the culture in such a way that it changes thinking, it changes behaviors, and ultimately changes outcomes. And a lot of it starts with the leader. Yet I give you something so simple. Growing up in education, as a teacher, as an assistant, it would always cringe. And even now, you know what teachers can't, most teachers, not all, some teachers can't wait for? I mean, from the first day of school, you know what they can't wait for? Let me see what you say. What can't they
Yeah,
wait for?
well, to see their children, the
Okay,
students, you
they
know?
can't wait to see their students.
Yeah.
Then right after they see their students, you know what they can't wait for?
Good
Break.
question. What?
Break.
Okay.
Whether that's Christmas break or Thanksgiving break or summer break or whatever kind of break, right? That's a culture. And I see these cartoons all the time, 5 more days and then, or 7 more days until, that's a culture. It's the way we think about the job we do. And it starts with the leader. So, how we create culture starts with the example that we set as the leader. It starts with the words that we choose to use. It starts with the conversations we choose to have. It starts with what we tolerate as leaders in our organizations. It starts with what we tolerate in our classrooms. It is no secret that there are kids that will act up in every single classroom except that one teacher right there. Kids will be late to every single classroom except that teacher's right there. Kids will act up in every except that teacher's right because that teacher has established a certain culture in their classroom of what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, what the standard is, a culture of respect, a culture of appreciation, of value, all through. And the goal for a leader is to eliminate silos of culture. You don't want silos. You want the entire organization in such a way that kids aren't late, that they are behaving, and that they are respected, and that they're valued, and that we're focused on learning. So, as difficult as it may sound, the book walks leaders exactly how to and really how to look at culture in a way that everything that you need you already have. This is not anything you need to go buy a program for. This is not anything that you need to buy 20-step program for. This you don't need to bring a consultant in. You have everything you need to establish the culture that you want in your school, in your classroom, in your district, in your society, in your organization. You just have to empower yourself enough to get.
Everyone who is listening right now, go on solutiontree.com and purchase a book of 6 Steps to a Strong School Culture, published by Solution Tree and written obviously by Dr. Sam Nix. Incredible. Make sure you order now a copy and, of course, keep listening. It's so true what you're saying. What do you do in order to be driven more by love than by fear? Because a lot of people, let's face it, teachers, principals have a lot on their shoulders, just because life happens. What is one or two strategies that you do that really helps you to improve your effectiveness as a leader, but also an educator, a husband, dad, and so on?
You started off your statement by what do I do to engage as a leader to be loved, not feared? Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, that you're not driven by fear but more by love.
Well,
So
the
what do you
first thing, Anna, is it's a funny thing about leadership. And the funny thing is, your heart for people will show up in your leadership. If you have a genuine desire to help and to support a person, it's going to come out in your conversation. It's going to come out in your interaction. It's going to come out in your actions. It's going to come out in your support. It's even going to come out in your accountability. But if you're more concerned about the outcome than the person, that's going to come out in your conversation because you'll be dismissive. If you're more concerned about perception, your position than a person, it's going to come out in your actions. And when people are scared to be exposed, scared to be fired, scared to whatever, scared people scare people. I'm going to say that again. Scared people scare people. But when you walk in confidence, and you walk in love, and you walk in respect, it garners that in return. So, what I do to be loved instead of feared, I'll use the word respected. Number one, treat everyone the way that you want to be treated. Going back to the name of your podcast, Why Knowledge Matters. Nobody is hearing that for the first time. So everybody has the knowledge, but not everybody has the application. And so for leaders, how do you, and then you ended up your statement by, as a man, as a husband, as a friend, as a whatever the case may be, we have to lead everything that we do in such a way that we value the people that we are interacting with. See, if I value you as a person, if I value you as an employee, if I value you as a wife, if I value you as a child, if I value you as a friend, there are certain ways that I'm going to speak to you, certain ways that I'm going to help you. I've got news for you. I don't value my child when I don't correct them. If my child runs out in the middle of the street and I want to make them feel good about it and make them, I'm not helping because one day I'm not going to be around. And what are they going to do? They're going to think it's okay to run into the street. So I have to know how to correct. I have to know how to support improvement. I have to know all those things in love, with respect, in genuine support of the person. When we lose sight of that, when we start talking to people like they're beneath us, when we start ignoring providing quality feedback that could help someone grow, when we start getting focused more on us and what we want and how we feel than on the people we serve and what they need to help the ultimate outcome, which in my case is student success, it's going to come out in such a way that's disingenuous. It's going to come out in such a way that causes mistrust. It's going to come out in such a way that doesn't build capacity in other people. Thus, will establish eventually fear. When you start treating people different, not being consistent with how you hold people accountable, saying one thing and doing another, all of those things contribute to cultures of fear and mistrust. Easier said than done. But just like with anything else, if you are willing to understand what it takes to be successful in this arena and follow the steps, you'll get the outcome. Just like with anything else. If you want to play the piano, it doesn't happen overnight. You have to learn the scales. You have to practice. Just like what we're talking about right now in leadership. The problem is very rarely want to do things that make us uncomfortable. And we very rarely want to do things that take time. And those are two things that every high level leader does. Every successful organization, that every successful part, you wouldn't be a successful podcast. You would not have a successful podcast if you did take the time, put in a work, go through the process. It doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen when you develop a mindset for short habits every day in alignment to your ultimate goal. That's what the book helps you to figure out.
Yeah, everyone really who's listening, go on solutiontree.com and really buy a copy of Six Steps to a Strong School Culture by Dr. Sam Nix. What a blessing. Tell me what you do because you seem to be really, really in shape as well. So, what do you do to keep yourself in shape and really sane, healthy? What do you do?
Well, my wife tries to feed me as many vegetables as possible, but I won't eat them. So that's let's start there. She's trying to make sure that I stay healthy, and it's a fight, right? But no, you have to take care of yourself. I wish that I did more, but having young children, I find it a joy as spending time with them outside and just really energizing and staying energetic and really just finding time um, to exercise as much as possible. I have to do a better job with that. But at the end of the day, you hit it on the head. If we're not taking care of us, we can't take care of others. And so it's priority that I need to make more of a priority. Whereas I used to work out maybe 2 to 3 times a week, I'm down to about once a week now. But that still is enough time for me to energize myself, to rejuvenate myself, my mind, things of that nature, so I can hit the ground running for the week. But I do think it's very important that we take the time to take care of ourselves.
Lastly, what makes you, that's an easy one, truly feel alive?
Forgive me because I couldn't hear that last part of what you said.
What makes you truly feel alive?
Man, that's a great question. What makes me truly feel alive is when I am able to inspire, to motivate, and to encourage others to do and to be better at whatever it is that they are endeavoring to do. I think that's why teaching is such a passion for me. It's because when someone can't do a thing or not understand a thing, and because of my efforts, because of my engagement with them, because of something that I was able to help them do, they were able to accomplish that task and feel value. That makes me feel alive. Whether it's with my children, with my wife, with in education, coaching, or supporting, I feel my most alive when helping others be or do.
Beautiful. Dr. Sam Nix, thank you so much for being on the show and for being truly a blessing to myself personally and really to the world.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate this more than I can express. And I appreciate your listening audience, their time, their attention, and for their engagement in our conversation.
Dr. Sam Nix. That's why knowledge matters. Make your life a masterpiece. Visit now programs.d-ykm.com. Meant to make you grow.